A single ray of sunlight pierces total darkness only once each year. This is the stunning reality of ancient underground sanctuaries engineered to capture the solstice sun, a feat of precision built without modern tools. By the end of our journey, you will understand the brilliant celestial clockwork that guided our ancestors and the profound secrets these stone chambers still whisper. We will explore why cultures from Ireland to Peru carved mountains and buried temples to harness this fleeting light, and what these acts reveal about a shared human drive to touch the cosmos. How does a moment of engineered sunlight connect us to people who lived thousands of years ago? That profound desire to touch the cosmos began with a simple, yet monumental, observation. The sun does not rise and set in the same place every day. Over the course of a year, it marches along the horizon, rising a little farther north or south each morning before turning back. The solstices are the 2 days when this solar journey reaches its extreme limits. On the summer solstice, the sun climbs to its highest, most northerly point, bathing the world in the longest day of light. On the winter solstice, it hangs low in the south, offering the briefest day before its promised return. For ancient sky watchers, these were not just calendar dates, they were the hinges of the year. They marked a critical turning point, a moment when the balance of light and dark, warmth and cold, life and dormancy was decided. These events were deeply woven into cultural understanding, seen as times of immense power, renewal, and a direct line of communication with the forces that govern their world. To build a structure that interacts with this precise celestial event requires a breathtaking depth of knowledge. Think of it as trying to hit a target you can only see once every 365 days, and you have to position your arrow years in advance. The architects of these sanctuaries needed to know with absolute certainty exactly where on the horizon the sun would peek over on that one specific morning. They achieved this not with telescopes or computers, but with patient, generational observation. We can picture early astronomers using the landscape itself as their tool. They might have placed a standing stone on a hilltop and from a fixed viewing point watched where the sun rose behind it day after day. They would note the shifting point of sunrise against a distant mountain notch or a cleft between 2 trees. Over years, decades, perhaps centuries, they mapped this solar path, identifying those 2 extreme points where the sun seemed to pause or turn before beginning its long walk back. This was the birth of precise solar astronomy. It was a slow, cumulative science written not in books but in memory, in myth, and ultimately in stone. By locking this celestial clockwork into the very bones of a mountain or a tomb, they performed a kind of magic. They made the infinite predictable. They gave a permanent home to a fleeting moment of cosmic alignment. Understanding this foundational genius transforms these spaces from simple holes in the ground into deliberate, sophisticated instruments. They are frozen conversations with the sky, and now we are beginning to listen. This celestial knowledge found its most breathtaking expression in a grassy mound on the banks of Ireland's River Boyne. Newgrange is a monument of staggering scale and even more profound intention. Constructed over 5,000 years ago, this massive circular tomb predates Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Giza. For most of the year, its inner heart is a place of silent, profound darkness. But for a few precious minutes around the dawn of the winter solstice, something miraculous happens. As the sun crests the horizon, a single, narrow blade of golden light finds a small opening above the entrance, a feature archaeologists call the roof box. This engineered slit is not an accident. It is a precision aperture. The light enters and begins a slow, deliberate crawl down a 60-foot-long stone passageway, a corridor so narrow that it forces the beam into a focused ribbon. After several minutes, it finally reaches the central chamber, exploding across the intricate spiral carvings on the rear wall in a radiant display that lasts for roughly 17 minutes before retreating the way it came. To stand in that chamber during this event is to witness a 5,000-year-old alarm clock going off. The engineering is astonishing. The entire passage is angled perfectly to match the low arc of the midwinter sun. The roof box itself is a masterpiece of stoneworking, designed to admit light only when the sun is at that specific, low solstice elevation. If the sun were higher in the sky, as it is in summer, the light would strike the roof stones above the opening and never enter. This is not a celebration of the sun at its peak, but a deliberate invocation of it at its weakest, most distant point. That timing is everything. Archaeologists suggest this could represent a symbolic rebirth of the sun itself, a ritual assurance that the light would return and life would continue. It may also have been a way to illuminate and honor the ancestral spirits believed to reside within, connecting the living community with the generations passed through this annual gift of light. The builders of Newgrange combined a deep understanding of seasonal cycles, precise solar observation, and monumental architecture to create a permanent contract with the cosmos. They built a machine not of gears and metal but of earth and stone, set to trigger just once a year, a testament to human ingenuity that continues to inspire awe in all who learn its story. While Newgrange harnesses the sun's rebirth, a different kind of solstice magic was being sculpted beneath the Mediterranean island of Malta. Here, the relationship with light was not about a triumphant beam, but a whispering, controlled infiltration. The Ħal Saflieni Hypogeum is a world unto itself, a three-level subterranean temple complex painstakingly carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago. Descending into its chambers feels like entering the silent, winding chambers of a colossal stone skull. It is a place of profound stillness where the air itself feels ancient. Among its many mysterious rooms, one stands out for its acoustic peculiarity, the so-called oracle room. Studies have shown that a deep voice spoken into a specific carved niche can produce a resonant, echoing vibration felt throughout the entire chamber, a haunting effect that would have been powerful during ceremonies. But the architects of this underworld were masters of more than just sound. Researchers examining the site's orientation believe that on key solar dates, like the solstices, narrow light shafts from the upper world were precisely aligned. These were not grand windows but subtle channels. Their purpose was likely not to flood the space with light, but to guide a slender, focused ray deep into the central darkness. Imagine a single thread of sunlight descending, perhaps striking a strategically placed piece of polished stone or a pool of water, casting a dancing, amplified reflection onto a sacred symbol or statue in the heart of the temple. This would transform the still, dark silence into a dynamic sensory experience. The sudden, ethereal illumination, paired with the resonant chanting amplified by the room's own architecture, would have created an overwhelming atmosphere of otherworldly connection. This points to a ritual purpose deeply tied to the cycles of the earth and sky. Many scholars link the hypogeum to a cultural focus on an earth goddess and the veneration of ancestors, as the lower levels served as a final resting place for thousands of individuals. In this context, the solstice light piercing the depths could symbolize a bridge between the living world above and the realm of the ancestors below, a moment of communion and renewal facilitated by celestial timing. The hypogeum represents a more intimate, immersive form of solstice engineering. It was not a solar observatory in the open air, but a theater of the senses buried in the earth, where light was not just observed, but carefully staged to evoke awe, to connect, and to transform a dark tomb into a momentarily radiant sanctuary. The story of solstice light travels north to the windswept islands of Orkney, Scotland. Here stands Maeshowe, a giant grass-covered mound that is one of the finest Neolithic chambered tombs in all of Europe. From the outside, it appears as a solemn, silent hill, but step inside, down its long, low entrance passage, and you enter a cathedral of stone. The engineering is once again breathtakingly precise. The passageway is aligned so that for several weeks around the winter solstice, the setting sun in the southwest sinks perfectly in line with its corridor. As dusk falls, a beam of orange light races down the passage, pierces the darkness of the central chamber, and strikes the rear wall with a dramatic finality, illuminating the massive cornerstones. This was clearly a sacred event for its builders, a symbolic closing of the year's cycle, perhaps meant to guide or honor the spirits within. But Maeshowe holds a second, more human layer of history. Centuries after it was sealed, Norse Vikings seeking shelter from a storm broke into the ancient tomb. What they left behind was not treasure but words. Using runes, they carved graffiti into the very stones of the sacred chamber. One inscription boasts, "These runes were carved by the man most skilled in runes in the Western Ocean." Another, more humorously, claims, "Injijeth is the most beautiful of all women." It is a startling juxtaposition. A space engineered for a profound celestial ritual became, 1,000 years later, a temporary refuge and a canvas for Viking pride and gossip. This duality speaks powerfully to the life of such places. The original sacred purpose, the deep connection to the solstice sun, was forgotten by those later visitors. They saw a sturdy, ready-made shelter, not an astronomical instrument, yet the alignment itself remained, a constant truth built into the landscape, waiting to be rediscovered. The meaning of the site shifted dramatically across cultures, from a Neolithic tomb aligned with the dying winter sun to a Viking pit stop. But the physical fact of the solstice light event endured, a silent, enduring phenomenon that outlasted the beliefs of any one group of people. It reminds us that these structures hold multiple stories. They are time capsules not only of their builders' intentions but also of the long human journey, showing how a place of deep ceremony can become a place of mundane survival, all while the sun continues its faithful, annual appointment with the stone. The journey of solstice light now ascends from the dark, earth-bound chambers of the Atlantic to the sun-drenched peaks of the Andes. Here, the Inca civilization did not merely capture a single ray, they sought to command the very path of the sun itself. At the heart of the lost city of Machu Picchu, perched high above the clouds, sits the Intihuatana stone. This is not a hidden sanctuary, but an open-air altar carved from the living bedrock of the mountain. Its name translates poetically as the hitching post of the sun. This was no passive observatory, it was an instrument of profound intention. The Inca, master astronomers and engineers, viewed the solstices with immense urgency. As the sun reached its lowest, weakest point in the sky at the December solstice, they feared it might continue its descent and vanish forever, plunging the world into eternal cold and darkness. Their ceremonies were acts of cosmic persuasion. The Intihuatana, with its precisely angled planes and upright pillar, functioned as a sophisticated sundial. On the solstices, the sun would cast no shadow from the central pillar at noon, or it would align its light perfectly along the stone's carved edges, signaling the pivotal moment of the sun's turn. Priests would perform rituals at this exact instant, symbolically tethering the sun to the stone to ensure its vital return journey across the sky. This act of celestial anchoring reveals a worldview where architecture, landscape, and cosmos were inseparable. The entire city of Machu Picchu is a testament to this fusion. Windows in temples frame the sunrise on specific dates, and carefully constructed niches in stone walls create natural sightlines to mountain peaks that mark solar positions. They didn't just build structures on the land, they engineered the landscape itself into a vast, interactive calendar. This broadens our idea of a sanctuary beyond four walls and a roof. For the Inca, the entire mountain ridge, with its shaped stones and aligned vistas, was a sanctuary designed for worship and observation. It was a holistic system where human artistry amplified the natural order, all dedicated to maintaining the delicate balance of a universe they believed depended on their vigilant, ritual dialogue with the heavens. The Intihuatana stone stands not as a tomb for light, but as a monument to a civilization's courageous conversation with the source of all life. The precision of Inca mountaintop astronomy finds a powerful echo far across the ocean in the dense jungles of the Yucatan. Here, the Maya civilization perfected a sacred geometry of light and shadow, most famously seen at the Pyramid of El Castillo at Chichen Itza. Every spring and autumn equinox, the setting sun casts a series of triangular shadows down the northern staircase, creating the illusion of a massive serpent slithering from the heavens to earth. This spectacle is world-renowned, a testament to their celestial genius. But the story of light at Chichen Itza does not end with the equinox. The Maya, masters of a calendar of astonishing complexity, also engineered their city to mark the sun's solstice extremes, the turning points of its longer journey. Their approach was holistic. They did not rely on a single structure, but wove astronomical alignments into the very fabric of their sacred geography. While El Castillo's main spectacle is equinoctial, researchers note that its corners are aligned to the sunrises of the summer and winter solstices. More intriguing are the possibilities hidden within. Certain internal chambers and adjacent structures may have been designed as solstice sanctuaries. The building known as El Caracol, or the observatory, with its narrow, slit-like windows, is believed to have been used for tracking Venus, but some alignments also correspond to solar extremes. The true heart of Maya ritual, however, may lie beneath the surface. The Yucatan Peninsula is a vast limestone shelf, dotted with natural sinkholes called cenotes. These were not just sources of water, they were considered sacred portals to the underworld, known as Xibalba. It is theorized that on the solstices, sunlight penetrating into specific cave systems or cenotes would have illuminated particular rock formations or carved idols deep within the earth, creating a dramatic moment of connection between the zenith sun and the realm below. Imagine a shaft of sunlight at its most powerful peak on the summer solstice, plunging into a ceremonial cenote. For a few minutes, it would pierce the perpetual darkness, perhaps striking a deposit of jade or a statue of a rain god, making it glow with an unearthly light. This would have been a moment of immense symbolic power, uniting the highest point of the sun with the deepest point of the watery underworld, balancing the cosmic forces of life and death, drought and rain. This practice transforms our understanding of the sanctuary from a built chamber to a natural one activated by human intention. The Maya saw their entire world as a vast, interactive instrument. By noting where the solstice sun rose over a distant temple, where its light fell in a dark cave, or where its shadow pointed on a pyramid, they could read the cosmos like a map. Their reverence for solar cycles was not just about marking time, it was about maintaining the essential balance of the universe, ensuring the continuity of seasons, harvests, and life itself through precise, ritual dialogue with the light. These feats of celestial engineering were achieved with a toolkit of astonishing simplicity. The most powerful tool was not made of stone or wood, but of disciplined human observation. To align a passage to the solstice sunrise, a builder's first instrument was likely a simple upright stake, a gnomon planted firmly in the ground. By marking the tip of its shadow at sunrise over many days, they could map the sun's creeping path along the horizon. The points where the shadow's direction ceased to change day after day revealed the solstice extremes. This required patience spanning years, a long-term investment in watching the sky. But knowing the angle was only half the battle. Translating that precise celestial line into a 60-foot-long, perfectly straight tunnel buried within a mound of earth and stone is where true ingenuity shines. They may have used a basic but effective sighting method. Imagine two posts placed far apart, aligned by eye to the solstice sunrise point. A third post could then be positioned by peering over the first two, creating a precise sight line that could be extended across the landscape. This invisible line in the air then became the blueprint for the passage walls, ensuring that long corridor remained perfectly level as it delved into the hillside presented another challenge. Here, the humble water level provided an elegant solution. A length of hollow reed or a carved stone trough filled with water creates a perfectly flat plain, regardless of the slope of the land. By checking points along the passage floor against this water line, the builders could guarantee their sacred pathway for the sun's ray would not dip or rise, ensuring the beam would travel true to its target deep inside. This was a process of incremental refinement, a conversation between vision and material that spanned generations. Knowledge was not stored in books but in lived practice. A master builder would teach an apprentice not just how to place a stone, but how to read a shadow, how to wait for the sun's confirmation, and how to listen to the story the land was telling. Experimental archaeologists working to reconstruct these techniques have shown that with these simple tools and sustained communal effort, the alignments we find so miraculous are entirely achievable. There were no lost technologies or alien interventions, only profound dedication. Each chisel mark, each leveled stone was an act of faith in a cosmological vision. They were building a permanent covenant between their community, their ancestors, and the cosmos itself, using patience and precision as their primary materials. This transforms our view of these sites from mysterious puzzles into testaments to a different kind of intelligence, one rooted in deep relationship with the natural world. The profound knowledge of the sun's path was not reserved only for the realm of the ancestors. This celestial clockwork was also integrated into the very homes and gathering places of the living, transforming entire communities into instruments aligned with the cosmos. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Pueblones engineered their dwellings with a solar precision that guided their daily and seasonal lives. High in the alcoves of Mesa Verde, the magnificent cliff palace contains a striking example. A specific window, carefully shaped and positioned in the stone masonry, allows a dagger of sunlight to penetrate the deep cliff shadow only on the morning of the winter solstice. This beam would slice across the interior, illuminating a ceremonial kiva or a painted symbol on the far wall. This was not a secret for the few, but a public event, a communal confirmation that the sun had reached its turning point and the promise of longer days was renewed. It served as a reliable, immovable calendar etched into architecture, signaling the time for ceremonies, storytelling, and planning for the season ahead. Far to the southeast, in the vast, arid landscape of Choco Canyon, the scale of this solar integration is even more grand. The Great House of Pueblo Bonito, a massive D-shaped complex with hundreds of rooms, was laid out with astonishing astronomical intent. Its primary wall is aligned precisely along the north-south axis, and key corners and openings are oriented to the rising and setting points of the sun at the solstices. A single rock slab on a nearby butte, known as the Sun Dagger site, creates a dynamic light show where shafts of sunlight bisect spiral petroglyphs on the summer solstice and frame them on the winter solstice. But the genius of Chaconne architects extended to the moon as well, with certain walls aligned to the lunar standstill, an 18.6-year cycle where the moon reaches its own extreme rising and setting points. This reveals a breathtaking depth of long-term observation. These alignments fundamentally shift our understanding. While tombs like Newgrange speak to a sacred dialogue with death and rebirth, these living spaces show the solstice sun governing the rhythms of life itself. The penetrating beam at Cliff Palace or the shadow cast across Pueblo Bonito's plaza was a practical tool. It marked the optimal time for planting or harvest, dictated the schedule for seasonal migrations, and set the dates for communal festivals that strengthened social bonds. It was a way to impose order on the chaotic flow of time, to synchronize an entire community with the undeniable pulse of the natural world. This weaving of celestial event into domestic and ceremonial space shows that capturing the solstice light was both a spiritual necessity and a foundational technology. It was how these societies ensured their harmony with a universe they saw as deeply interconnected, where the sun's annual journey was a partner in the story of their survival. Yet this annual descent of light into darkness was far more than a calendar event. For the cultures that built these sanctuaries, it was a moment of profound cosmic symbolism. Across continents and millennia, a shared mythological theme emerges: the eternal struggle and necessary balance between light and dark. The solstice was not merely a turning point, it was a dramatic chapter in this story. In the depths of winter, when the sun reached its weakest point, it was often seen as a sun god growing old, wounded, or descending into an underworld. The engineered ray of light piercing a tomb was a visual representation of this divine journey, a sign that the god had not been vanquished but was visiting the realm of ancestors or the earth itself. Celtic mythology, for instance, spoke of the sun entering the earth at the winter solstice to be reborn from its depths. This gives structures like Newgrange a breathtaking narrative. That narrow beam traveling down the long passage to illuminate a spiral, a symbol often linked to life, death, and rebirth, can be interpreted as a symbolic fertilization, a divine marriage between the celestial sun and the earthly womb of the goddess. It was a ritual to ensure the sun's vitality and its promised return. Similarly, the Incas' act of hitching the sun was a direct intervention in this cosmic drama, preventing the light from being lost to darkness forever. The light event was therefore a moment of critical communication. It was a bridge for cultures with a deep reverence for ancestors. That beam connecting the world above with a chamber below served as a luminous pathway. It was a way for the living to send a message of remembrance and honor, and perhaps to receive guidance or blessing from those who had passed. The light did not just illuminate stone, it illuminated a connection across generations. At its core, this engineered moment was a powerful reaffirmation of cosmic order. In a world where seasons dictated survival, the solstice was the ultimate proof that the universe operated on a reliable, rhythmic pattern. By building a machine that responded to this pattern, humans were participating in the maintenance of that order. They were aligning their human-made world with the divine machinery of the cosmos, ensuring harmony and continuity. The immense effort, the generational labor, makes perfect sense when viewed through this lens. They were not just quarrying stone, they were crafting a covenant. They were building a permanent physical prayer for balance, for renewal, and for the enduring cycle of life itself. The fleeting beam of light was their signature on that contract, witnessed year after year, a silent, radiant promise written in the language of the sun. But the power of these solstices sanctuaries was not confined to the visual alone. The stones themselves were engineered to sing. Within the silent depths of the Hypogeum of Malta and the echoing chamber of Newgrange, researchers have documented a remarkable phenomenon: extraordinary acoustics. These are not accidental echoes but carefully crafted soundscapes. The curved walls, the domed ceilings, and the specific dimensions of these spaces amplify certain frequencies in profound ways. In the oracle room of the Hypogeum, a deep voice can produce a resonant vibration that seems to hum through the very bones of the structure. At Newgrange, sound tests have shown that rhythmic drumming or chanting within the central chamber creates a powerful, immersive reverberation, a sound that feels ancient and overwhelming. This leads to a compelling theory that the annual solstice light show was a multisensory ritual. imagine the scene as that first sliver of sunlight pierced the roof box. The waiting participants, shrouded in a year's worth of darkness, would not have witnessed it in silence. At the precise moment of illumination, a chant might have begun, or a drum been struck. The architecture would then take over, transforming those human sounds into something supernatural. The frequencies would bounce and amplify, filling the stone womb with a palpable, vibrating energy that coincided perfectly with the sun's golden beam crawling across the sacred spirals. Modern studies using sophisticated equipment have mapped these acoustic properties, confirming that these chambers act as natural resonators for specific low tones. The combination of this engineered sound with the engineered light could have a profound effect on human consciousness. The rhythmic vibration, the flickering light in total darkness, the shared anticipation, all of these elements are known to potentially induce trance-like states. For the participants, this was not a passive observation, it was an active, transformative experience. They were not just watching the sun return, they were feeling it, hearing it, becoming part of its rebirth through a full-body ritual. This transforms our understanding of these sites from simple observatories into total experiential environments. They were ancient virtual reality chambers designed to overload the senses in a controlled, sacred way. The goal was transcendence, to use the precise mechanics of sound and light to bridge the gap between the human and the divine, to make the cosmic event not just seen, but physically and spiritually felt by the entire community gathered within the earth. The shimmering path of the solstice sun did not end when it struck stone. At many of these sacred sites, it met its liquid twin, water. From the river Boyne flowing past Newgrange to the sacred cenotes of the Yucatan, water is a constant, silent partner in these celestial designs. Its presence was far from accidental. For ancient engineers, a still pool or a subterranean stream offered a dynamic canvas upon which the sun's light could paint in ways solid rock alone could not. Imagine that precise beam from a roof box or a light shaft finally reaching its target, not on a flat wall, but on the dark, still surface of a ceremonial pool. In an instant, the single ray would double, reflecting upwards to dance across a ceiling or surrounding stones in a shimmering, amplified display. This transforms a linear event into a three-dimensional spectacle, filling the entire space with moving, liquid light. The engineering insight here is profound. By incorporating a reflective pool at the exact focal point of the alignment, the builders could magnify the impact of that brief, precious moment, ensuring that even those not in the direct path of the beam would be bathed in its reflected glory. Water's role, however, went far beyond mere amplification. In countless cosmologies, water was seen as a boundary, a portal between the world of the living and the realm of ancestors or deities. A sunbeam plunging into a deep, dark pool or a cenote was a powerful visual metaphor for this journey. It showed the sun god descending into the underworld at winter solstice, or perhaps drawing vitality from the primordial waters to be reborn. This symbolic layer turns a practical reflection pool into a potent ritual instrument. At a site like Chichen Itza, the theory that solstice light might have been directed into a cenote takes on this profound meaning. The zenith sun, at the peak of its power, would momentarily illuminate the sacred depths, creating a fleeting bridge between the highest heaven and the deepest underworld. This was not just a light show, it was a cosmological balancing act made visible. The incorporation of water also speaks to a mastery of the entire site as a holistic system. Engineers may have designed subtle channels or basins to capture rainwater, ensuring a reflective surface was present for the key solar event. They might have positioned a pool so that the sun's path was marked not just on a wall, but as a growing line of brilliance across the water's surface as the beam traveled. This adds a temporal element, turning the event into a slow, observable progression. The combination of elements earth and stone to shape the passage, light as the celestial messenger, and water as the transformative medium reveals a design philosophy of breathtaking unity. These sanctuaries were not just aligned to the cosmos, they were microcosms themselves, engineered ecosystems where the fundamental forces of the world were brought into deliberate, harmonious conversation. The solstice light was the conductor, and every element in the chamber, even the still water waiting in the dark, played its part in the annual symphony of renewal. The certainty we feel when a solstice beam strikes its target is compelling, but the story is not without its skeptics. Within archaeology, a healthy debate persists about the intentionality behind these ancient alignments. The core question is this: could these precise orientations be the result of coincidence rather than cosmic engineering? Some researchers point to statistics. With so many ancient structures built across millennia, they argue, a certain number are bound to align with major solar events purely by random chance. A tomb entrance facing roughly east, for instance, has a reasonable probability of catching a sunrise on some significant day. This perspective urges caution against seeing deliberate design in every corridor and window, suggesting that later cultures might have repurposed or modified sites, accidentally creating alignments their original builders never intended. The case of Maeshowe is illustrative here. While its winter solstice alignment is precise, some scholars debate whether its primary purpose was astronomical or if the solar effect was a secondary, symbolic benefit to a tomb built for other reasons. These debates are not dismissals, they are essential checks in the scientific process, forcing a rigorous examination of the evidence. They remind us that ancient people had multifaceted lives, and a structure could serve as a tomb, a territorial marker, and a celestial calendar all at once, with no single purpose excluding the others. This critical lens ensures our interpretations remain grounded in the physical evidence unearthed from the earth, stone by stone. Alongside these academic discussions, a more speculative realm of theory has flourished in popular culture. The breathtaking precision of sites like the Great Pyramid or Picchu has fueled narratives of lost advanced civilizations or even extraterrestrial guidance. These ideas often emerge from a sense of awe, a feeling that such accomplishments seem impossible with the simple tools archaeologists describe. They ask, how could people moving multi-ton blocks achieve such perfect alignments without advanced technology? While these questions spark imagination, mainstream archaeology addresses them by pointing to the demonstrated ingenuity of ancient engineers, the evidence of trial and error at building sites, and the sheer power of coordinated human labor over generations. The alternative theories, while captivating, often rely on selective evidence and gaps in the historical record, rather than the cumulative, cross-verified findings of excavation and comparative study. Engaging with these debates is not about choosing sides in a simplistic way, but about understanding how knowledge is built. It involves weighing the solidity of an excavated tool against the allure of an unexplained perfect angle. This tension itself is part of the mystery's enduring power. It invites us to look deeper, to appreciate not just the light in the chamber, but the immense human effort required to create the chamber itself, an effort that remains for many wondrous enough. For centuries, the great stone mounds stood silent, their deepest secrets buried under earth and legend. The roof box at Newgrange was completely clogged with fallen rubble and soil, its purpose utterly forgotten. The winter sun continued its annual approach, but the light found only solid earth where a precision slit should have been. The memory of the solstice alignment at Maeshowe had faded so completely that even the Vikings who carved their runes inside saw only a shelter, not a solar instrument. These ancient machines were switched off, their celestial programming hidden. Their rediscovery is a modern detective story, pieced together by patient observers who learned to read the landscape with new eyes. In the 1960s, archaeologist Michael O'Kelly began the meticulous excavation of Newgrange, As his team cleared the massive entrance stone, they noticed something curious above the doorway, a gap that seemed too deliberate to be collapsed. Carefully, they removed the infill, revealing the long-sealed roof box for the first time in millennia. O'Kelly, sensing its potential, made a decision. On the morning of December 21, 1967, he entered the cold, dark chamber before dawn. He waited in total blackness. Then, as the sun crested the horizon, a thin blade of light pierced the newly opened slit and began its slow, miraculous crawl down the passageway, just as it had 5,000 years earlier. He was the first person in modern history to witness the event, a moment that instantly transformed our understanding of the site from a tomb into a sophisticated astronomical instrument. Across the sea in Orkney, the story was one of slow, scholarly realization. The alignment of Maeshowe's passage had been noted in surveys, but its significance as a winter solstice event was pieced together through careful calculation and observation. Researchers like archaeologist Magnus Spence and later scholars combined architectural surveys with astronomical data, confirming that the setting sun would indeed flood the chamber. They then organized watches, often in harsh December weather, to witness and document the phenomenon. Their work turned a theoretical alignment into a witnessed event, confirming that the Neolithic builders had intended this dramatic connection all along. These rediscoveries were rarely greeted with immediate acceptance. Early proponents often faced skepticism from colleagues who doubted the astronomical sophistication of so-called primitive cultures. The idea that ancient people could engineer such precise alignments challenged long-held assumptions. It took dedicated individuals, often amateur astronomers or archaeologists working outside the mainstream, to compile the evidence. They spent years, sometimes decades, visiting sites at dawn on key dates, taking photographs, and meticulously recording angles of light and shadow. Their proof was not in a single document, but in the cumulative weight of witnessed events, a solar signature that could not be denied. This patient work restored a lost chapter of human history. It gave voice back to the stones, allowing them to speak in the language of light once more. Because of these modern seekers, we can now stand in those chambers and share the same awe, watching the same precise beam fulfill its ancient appointment, a direct line of sight not just to the sun, but to the brilliant minds who plotted its path into eternity. This ancient conversation between stone and sunlight is not a closed book. Today, a new generation of artists and architects is picking up the thread, using modern tools to explore the same celestial principles that captivated our ancestors. Their work offers a living bridge across time, proving the human desire to mark the sun's journey is as vibrant now as it was 5,000 years ago. One striking example is James Turrell's Roden Crater, an ongoing monumental art project within an extinct volcanic cinder cone in Arizona. Turrell is not merely building a structure, he is reshaping the mountain itself to become a colossal optical instrument for observing celestial phenomena. Specific chambers and tunnels within the crater are engineered so that on the solstices and equinoxes, beams of light enter through precisely placed apertures, projecting perfect circles or ovals of light onto interior walls. The effect is both ancient and utterly contemporary, a minimalist sensory experience that reconnects us to the primal awe of watching the cosmos move. Similarly, architect Stephen Hall designed the chapel of St. Ignatius in Seattle with what he calls vessels of light. While not solely solstice-aligned, the building's design intentionally channels daylight in dramatic, changing ways throughout the year, creating a modern sanctuary where architecture choreographs the sun's passage. These contemporary projects are not replicas, but reinterpretations. They ask the same fundamental question the builders of Newgrange asked: how can we frame a cosmic event to transform a space and our experience within it? They demonstrate that the impulse to capture celestial light is not about a lost technology, but a persistent human longing to make the infinite tangible, to find our place in the grand cycle by marking its turning points with intention. Alongside these physical constructions, digital technology provides another powerful lens. Researchers now use sophisticated three-dimensional modeling software to simulate ancient sites with incredible accuracy. They can input precise geographic coordinates, the exact dimensions of a passageway, and even the surrounding topography. With a click, they can run the simulation forward or backward in time, watching how sunlight would have interacted with the structure not just today, but thousands of years in the past. This is crucial because the Earth's tilt oscillates very slowly over a cycle of about 26,000 years, a phenomenon known as axial precession. The angle of the solstice sun rising over a distant hill 5 millennia ago was slightly different than it is now. Digital simulations can account for this gradual shift, allowing archaeologists to test whether an alignment we see today was even more precise when the temple was first consecrated. It helps answer those skeptical questions about coincidence by modeling the sun's path across centuries and showing the statistical unlikelihood of a perfect alignment occurring by chance at the time of construction. This virtual reverse engineering reveals layers of intention invisible to the naked eye. A simulation might show that a shaft of light designed for the winter solstice also grazes a significant carving on the days leading up to the event, creating a countdown of shadows. It can demonstrate how reflective pools would have amplified light, or how the acoustics of a chamber would have interacted with the moment of illumination. Through these digital tools, we are not just observing ancient genius, we are beginning to collaborate with it, using our technology to fully appreciate theirs. This fusion of past inspiration and present investigation creates a powerful feedback loop. The artists show us the enduring emotional and spiritual power of aligning with celestial cycles. The scientists, with their simulations and data, show us the breathtaking intellectual and observational rigor required to achieve it. Together, they affirm that these ancient sanctuaries were not products of superstition, but of a profound, empirical relationship with the sky. The solstice beam is more than a historical artifact. It is an invitation, one that modern minds are still accepting, proving that the drive to build a doorway for the sun is a timeless signature of the human spirit. This pattern of light and stone is a language spoken across the globe. From the banks of the Nile to the forests of North America, cultures with no conceivable contact independently engineered their landscapes to converse with the solstice sun. In ancient Egypt, the great temple of Karnak is a sprawling stone sculpture dedicated to the sun god Amun-Ra. Its central axis is aligned so that on the winter solstice, the rising sun would shine directly down the long hypostyle hall, illuminating the inner sanctuary. This was not a hidden beam for a select few, but a public spectacle of solar power, reinforcing the pharaoh's role as the sun's intermediary on Earth. Far across the Atlantic, in what is now Ohio, the Great Serpent Mound winds its effigy across a ridge. The massive earthwork's coiled tail aligns to the summer solstice sunset, while its open jaws point to the winter solstice sunrise. Here, the architecture is not stone, but the earth itself, sculpted to frame the sun's extreme positions in a continuous, sinuous form. Even in the jungles of Cambodia, the towers of Angkor Wat are positioned so that on the spring equinox, the sun rises directly over the central tower, an alignment that many scholars believe also encodes solstice markers in its precise geometry. Why would cultures separated by oceans and millennia arrive at such similar architectural solutions? Two compelling ideas emerge. The first is independent invention, born from a shared human experience. Every human community, regardless of location, lived under the same sun and witnessed its dependable yet dramatic seasonal journey. The solstices were undeniable, universal events that dictated the rhythms of agriculture, hunting, and survival. Facing this powerful, life-giving force, it is a natural human impulse to seek alignment, to build markers that honor, predict, and perhaps influence its behavior. It is a logical, almost inevitable response to the most dominant feature in the sky. The second idea is diffusion, the slow spread of knowledge through ancient trade routes and migrations. While direct contact between Egypt and Ohio seems improbable, concepts can travel indirectly over vast stretches of time. A basic understanding of solar cycles is a portable, immensely valuable piece of knowledge. It is possible that core astronomical principles observed in one region could have been carried, adapted, and reinvented by others, blending with local beliefs to create unique but related expressions. The truth likely lies in a blend of both. A universal human curiosity met with local environmental conditions and spiritual beliefs, producing a beautiful diversity of sanctuaries all singing the same celestial chorus. This panoramic view reveals something profound about our species. Engineering a solstice alignment is not merely a technical achievement, it is a foundational human story. It represents the moment we stopped being passive subjects of the cosmos and began active participants. By moving a stone, shaping a mound, or angling a corridor, we entered into a dialogue with the universe. We created permanent witnesses to a fleeting event, turning anxiety about the dying winter sun into a ceremony of guaranteed return. This thread connects the priest in Karnak, the astronomer at Chichen Itza, and the community elder at Cliff Palace. They all shared a deep desire to weave their human narrative into the grand, cyclical narrative of the sky. The specific gods may have had different names, the materials varied from limestone to prairie sod, but the intention resonates with a familiar harmony. It shows that long before global communication, humanity was already united by a common project, to find our place in the light, and to build a home for wonder in the precise geometry of the turning year. The air inside the chamber is a living thing, thick with the scent of damp earth and cold stone. You have been waiting for hours in a darkness so complete it feels solid, pressed close by the weight of the mound above. Your breath mists in the chill, and the only sounds are the soft rustle of woven garments and the shallow breathing of the others gathered around you. This is not a casual vigil, it is an act of collective will, a year's worth of anticipation focused on a single, fragile moment. A low chant begins, its rhythm echoing strangely off the curved walls, the sound seeming to come from the stones themselves. It vibrates in your chest, a primal hum that pushes back against the pressing dark. All eyes are fixed on the far end of the long passageway, a deeper blackness in the black. Then a change, the faintest hint of grayness seeps into the absolute gloom of the entrance. The chanting falters, then swells with renewed intensity. A collective tension grips the space, a held breath shared by 30 souls, and then you see it, not a flood but a thread. A razor-thin line of gold, impossibly brilliant, appears at the mouth of the passage. It is so precise it seems cut from the darkness with a knife. For a long moment it simply hangs there, a luminous crack in the world. Then, with agonizing slowness, it begins to move. The beam crawls down the stone corridor, a living ribbon of light inching across the carved spirals on the walls, bringing their shapes into sudden, fleeting relief. The light has a physical presence, a warmth you can feel advancing toward you through the cold air. The golden line grows thicker, brighter, as the sun climbs a fraction higher outside. Its target is clear, a single, deeply carved spiral on the rear wall of the chamber. The beam touches its outer edge, and a collective gasp ripples through the people. The chant reaches a crescendo as the light fully embraces the symbol, setting the spiral ablaze. In that radiant pool of light, time seems to stop. The darkness is not banished but transformed, pushed back into respectful shadows. In the illuminated symbol, you see the promise fulfilled. The sun has returned. The long descent into winter has ended. the world will turn again toward warmth and growth. The emotional release is palpable, a wave of awe and profound relief that washes through the chamber. This is not just observed, it is felt in the bones. That 17 minutes of light is a covenant written in gold. It is the community's fears for the future, their gratitude for the past, and their hopes for the harvest to come, all made visible. When the beam finally begins to retreat, shrinking back along its own path, the chamber does not return to mere darkness. It holds the memory of the light, the shared experience now woven into the story of the people. You step back out into the gray winter dawn, but the inner vision of that golden spiral, born from the heart of the earth, stays with you. It is a reassurance carved not just in stone, but in the very rhythm of the cosmos witnessed together. That shared human impulse to mark the sky eventually demanded its own science, a discipline dedicated to listening to what the stones are trying to say about the stars. This is archaeoastronomy, a field built on a simple, powerful fusion. It brings together the meticulous, earthbound detective work of archaeology with the precise, mathematical language of astronomy. Its goal is to decode how ancient cultures perceived the cosmos and, more importantly, how they embedded that knowledge into their world. For generations, observations of solstice alignments were often seen as speculative curiosities, the domain of enthusiastic amateurs rather than serious academics. The turning point came when researchers began applying rigorous, repeatable methods. The first step is the painstaking survey. Using modern theodolites and GPS, archaeoastronomers measure the exact orientation of a passageway, a window, or a standing stone with millimeter precision. This hard data creates a reliable blueprint, but a line on a map is meaningless without its celestial counterpart. The next layer involves calculating the precise azimuth, the compass bearing, of the sun or moon on a specific ancient date. This requires sophisticated software that can account for the slow wobble of the Earth's axis over millennia, a key factor called axial precession. The sun that rose over that distant mountain notch 5,000 years ago did so at a slightly different point than it does today. By dialing the cosmic clock back, researchers can see the sky as the builders saw it. The final, crucial piece is context. An alignment must be weighed against the archaeological evidence. Was this orientation repeated in multiple structures at the site? Does it align with burials, altars, or ceremonial artifacts found within? Are there mythological texts or oral histories that speak of a sun god traveling a specific path? This interdisciplinary cross-check is what transforms a fascinating coincidence into a compelling case for intentional design. Experts like Professor Clive Ruggles, a pioneer in the field, emphasize that archaeoastronomy is not about proving ancient people were astronomers in the modern sense. It is about understanding how celestial cycles were woven into the very fabric of their culture, their religion, and their daily survival. This scientific framework has rehabilitated sites once shrouded in mystery. The underground sanctuaries we have explored are no longer seen as just tombs or temples with odd features. Through the lens of archaeoastronomy, they are revealed as deliberate instruments. The roof box at Newgrange is not a random architectural quirk. It is a data point that fits a predictive model of solstice observation. The orientation of Maeshowe's passage is not approximate. It is a calculated alignment that would have been verified over generations. This discipline provides the backbone for our understanding, offering a language to articulate the genius we can intuitively feel standing in those chambers. It shows us that the intelligence of the past is not lost. It is simply encoded in a different syntax, one written in stone and aligned to the moving light. By learning to read it, we do more than solve an ancient puzzle. We begin a conversation with the architects of eternity, listening as they explain their world through the silent, steadfast testimony of the sun's annual return. Yet the same light that once promised renewal now presents a profound modern dilemma. the Solstice beam, a 5,000-year-old miracle of engineering, can become an agent of slow decay. When that focused sunlight enters a sealed chamber, it does more than illuminate carvings, it subtly changes the environment. The heat and energy from the beam can raise the humidity inside the stone room, encouraging the growth of algae, lichen, and destructive microbes on the ancient artwork. Every time a group of visitors enters, they bring in moisture from their breath and skin, further altering the delicate microclimate that has preserved these spaces for millennia. The stones themselves, subjected to these new cycles of warmth and dampness after centuries of stable darkness, can begin to erode or flake. The very phenomenon we seek to witness is, in a cruel twist, threatened by our presence. This creates an urgent ethical question. How do we balance public access and education with the absolute duty to preserve these irreplaceable sites for future generations? Different locations have adopted different strategies, each with its own compromises. At Newgrange, access to the inner chamber during the actual solstice sunrise is now managed through an annual public lottery. Only a handful of winners, accompanied by guides, are allowed inside for the event each year. This drastically reduces human impact on that critical morning, but it also means an experience once meant for a community is now a rare privilege for a few. In Malta, the challenge is even more acute. The Ħal Saflieni Hypogeum is so sensitive that visitor numbers are strictly capped each day, and time inside is limited. The air is carefully climate-controlled to maintain stable temperature and humidity, protecting the fragile limestone and the unique ochre paintings that still cling to some ceilings. To enter is to step into a carefully monitored vault, a far cry from the living, breathing ritual space it once was. These necessary restrictions, however, create a new kind of distance. They can make a sacred site feel more like a museum exhibit, separating us from the immersive, communal experience that was central to its original purpose. The heart of the conflict is this: does preservation mean placing these sanctuaries under glass, turning them into artifacts we look at but no longer truly experience? Or is there a way to honor both the physical structure and the profound human connection it was built to foster? Emerging technologies are offering a potential path forward. High-resolution, three-dimensional laser scanning can create perfect digital twins of these chambers, capturing every carving and contour. Coupled with virtual reality, these models could allow anyone, anywhere, to take a guided tour at any time of year. They could stand in the central chamber of Newgrange as a virtual solstice sunrise unfolds, with accurate acoustics simulated, without a single extra molecule of moisture entering the real space. Augmented reality apps at the sites themselves could superimpose historical imagery or light effects onto a viewer's device, providing context without touching a stone. These are not replacements for the awe of being physically present, but they could become vital supplements, easing the pressure on the originals while expanding access exponentially. The goal is sustainable wonder. It is about using our own era's tools of precision to protect the ancient ones, ensuring that 5,000 years from now, a beam of winter sunlight can still find its way to a carved spiral, uninterrupted and unchanged, a promise kept across time. The stones may be silent, but the people who come to them are not. Every winter solstice, crowds gather in the cold pre-dawn darkness at Newgrange, at Stonehenge, at Maeshowe. They are not there as archaeologists or historians, but as participants in an experience that feels strangely personal. What is it about watching a sliver of sunlight strike an ancient wall that resonates so powerfully in our modern age? The answer lies in a profound psychological state, one that these sites were engineered to evoke awe. Awe is the feeling we get in the presence of something vast that transcends our current understanding of the world. It is a mix of wonder, humility, and a slight sense of disorientation. For our ancestors, that vastness was the cosmos itself, a divine force made momentarily tangible in a beam of light. For us today, standing in that same beam, the vastness is also time. We are humbled by the realization that a human mind 5,000 years ago calculated this moment, and that their hands built a machine so perfect it still works. It cuts through the noise of our daily lives, the constant digital chatter, and delivers a direct, visceral punch of connection. One visitor to Newgrange described it not as seeing a light show, but as feeling a door open in her chest, a sudden, wordless understanding of a shared human story that stretched back further than she had ever truly felt. Another, at Chichen Itza, spoke of the crowd's collective gasp as the serpent's shadow appeared, a sound of unified wonder that erased language and cultural barriers in an instant. These engineered moments tap into what psychologists call the sublime, an experience so beautiful and powerful it borders on overwhelming. It is the thrill of standing at the edge of a cliff or watching a storm roll in from the sea. The ancient architects, whether they knew the term or not, were masters of the sublime. They took the immense, slow turn of the solar year and compressed it into a single, dramatic point of light in a dark room. They gave form to infinity. This triggers a deep, innate human need for meaning. In a world that can often feel fragmented and random, the solstice alignment is the opposite. It is perfect, predictable order. It is a promise kept across centuries. Witnessing it offers a rare sense of certainty, a reminder that we are part of a larger, rhythmic system that operates on a scale far beyond our individual concerns. This is not about adopting the specific religious beliefs of the builders. It is about connecting with the fundamental human impulse that led to those beliefs, the desire to find our place in the grand scheme. The modern pilgrim, camera in hand, is seeking the same thing the ancient celebrant sought with drum and chant, a moment of transcendence, a brief escape from the mundane into a story much bigger than oneself. The sanctuary, therefore, never truly dies. Its physical purpose may fade, but its psychological function remains eternally available. It waits, a patient instrument, for any human who steps inside and looks toward the light, ready to deliver its ancient gift of awe once more. But for every chamber where the sun's purpose is clear, there are others shrouded in tantalizing ambiguity. The Great Pyramid of Giza, perhaps the most studied structure on Earth, holds one such enduring puzzle. Within its colossal stone heart lies a narrow, steeply ascending shaft known as the Descending Passage. For most of the year, this corridor is simply a dark, cramped tunnel. However, some researchers have noted that around the time of the winter solstice, the setting sun can align with the passage's angle, potentially allowing a last glimmer of light to penetrate deep into the pyramid's interior. The key word is potentially. Critics of this solar theory point out that the passage was originally sealed and hidden behind the pyramid's casing stones, making it inaccessible for any ceremonial light show. They argue its primary function was structural or funerary, not astronomical. Yet, the precision of its alignment is difficult to dismiss entirely, leaving a door open for speculation. Was it a symbolic alignment, meant only for the sun god's spiritual passage rather than human observation? Or is it a remarkable coincidence born from the pyramid's cardinal orientation? This debate underscores a critical point in archaeoastronomy, distinguishing between an alignment that is used and one that is merely present. Without corroborating cultural evidence or a clear ritual space at the shaft's end, the descending passage remains an elegant, unresolved mystery. Far from the Egyptian desert, another enigma lies submerged off the coast of Japan. The Yonaguni Monument is a sprawling, underwater formation of massive stone terraces, sharp angles, and what appear to be steps and platforms. Some proponents, including certain researchers, argue these are the ruins of a lost civilization, and they point to specific features that seem aligned with the solstices. They suggest that certain edges or channels could have been designed to channel sunlight on significant days, perhaps for a sunken ceremonial center. Mainstream geology, however, offers a different explanation. The structure is composed of sandstone, a rock naturally prone to fracturing along straight lines due to tectonic activity. The seemingly perfect right angles and flat surfaces could be the result of natural jointing and erosion from ocean currents over millennia. The debate here is fundamental. It is the question of human artistry versus the patient, random hand of nature. The Yonaguni structures challenge our very ability to discern intention when the usual context, artifacts, and cultural records are absent, swallowed by the sea. It is a stark reminder that the ancient world still holds cards it has not yet revealed. These unresolved sites are not failures of science, they are its engine. They represent the active, living edge of discovery where evidence is weighed, theories clash, and our understanding remains refreshingly incomplete. Every debated alignment pushes researchers to refine their methods, to look for subtler clues, and to ask better questions. Perhaps a future excavation near the Great Pyramid will uncover a text referencing a solstice ritual. Maybe new underwater scanning technology will reveal a carved symbol at Yonaguni that settles the debate. The possibility that the next great solstice sanctuary is still out there, waiting beneath a farmer's field or a dense forest canopy, is what keeps the field electrifying. It means that the map of humanity's celestial conversation is still being drawn, and that the ancient impulse to capture a ray of sun may have left its mark in places we have only begun to dream of exploring. That profound sense of awe was anchored in a deeply practical reality. For ancient societies, the solstice was not just a spiritual milestone, it was the most critical entry in the agricultural calendar. The precise moment the sun began its return journey signaled the turning point for survival itself. Knowing the exact date of the winter solstice with absolute certainty allowed a community to plan the entire year ahead. Farmers could calculate the optimal window for sowing seeds as the days lengthened. Herders could schedule the movement of livestock to sheltered pastures before the deepest cold set in. Leaders could organize the storage of food and resources, ensuring the community could endure the lean months. This was not a matter of convenience, it was a matter of resilience. A mistake in timing could mean a failed harvest, hardship, and a threat to the continuation of the community. The engineered light beam in a dark sanctuary provided that certainty in an era before printed calendars or digital alerts. It was a celestial alarm clock that could not be argued with, observed and verified by the entire community. We can picture how this might have worked in practice. The passageway or chamber itself could have served as a giant stone sundial. Perhaps specific carvings on the wall or stones set into the floor were positioned to be illuminated in sequence as the solstice sun rose. In the days leading up to the pivotal morning, the beam of light might have crept closer and closer to a central marker, creating a visible countdown. On the day itself, when the light finally touched that precise point or symbol, it was the official declaration, the solar decree that the turning point had been reached. This transformed the ritual from a passive observance into an active, communal confirmation of a fact essential to their way of life. The sacred engineering served a vital, everyday function. The spiritual and the practical were not separate realms. They were woven together into a single, coherent understanding of the world. The sun god's rebirth was synonymous with the earth's renewal and the promise of future food. By building a temple that captured this moment, they were simultaneously performing a religious rite and consulting an agricultural almanac of unparalleled accuracy. This duality is key to understanding the immense effort they invested. They were not merely building for ceremony, they were building for continuity. The sanctuary was a tool for synchronizing human activity with the immutable rhythms of nature, ensuring that their prayers for abundance were backed by precise, actionable knowledge. The beam of light was both a blessing and a blueprint, guiding them through the annual cycle of challenge and renewal. The stone itself was a carefully chosen actor in this celestial drama. The shimmering white quartz that clads the entrance of Newgrange was not merely decorative. In the low light of a winter dawn, this crystalline stone would have glittered like captured frost, scattering the first rays of the sun and announcing the monument's presence across the valley. This brilliant facade created a beacon, a focal point that drew the eye toward the precise spot where the sun's magic would occur. Inside, the builders selected dense, dark stones for the passage walls, stones that would absorb stray light and deepen the surrounding shadow, making that single, crawling beam appear all the more brilliant and focused by contrast. This interplay of reflective and absorbent surfaces reveals a sophisticated understanding of light's behavior, an ancient stagecraft using geology as its medium. Across the sea in Malta, the choice was dictated by necessity and amplified by intention. The entire hypogeum was carved from the island's soft Globigerina limestone. This stone is relatively easy to shape with simple stone and antler tools, allowing for the creation of those smooth, curved chambers and precise light shafts. But its pale, almost creamy color also served a purpose. In the utter blackness of the underground, a beam of sunlight striking this lighter stone would have glowed with a soft, diffused radiance, illuminating the space more fully than a darker rock ever could. The material properties were harnessed to maximize the visual and emotional impact of the solstice moment. Beyond mere practicality, stones carried deep symbolic weight. In many cultures, specific types of rock were believed to be the bones of the Earth Mother or the solidified flesh of ancestral beings. Building a sanctuary from such stone was not just construction, it was a literal integration of the sacred structure with the living landscape. To use a stone that glittered like the sun or one that glowed from within when touched by light was to embed the very essence of the celestial event into the physical fabric of the temple. This thoughtful selection, however, came at an immense cost of labor. The quartz for Newgrange was not local. It was painstakingly gathered from mountains over 50 miles away, each gleaming cobble transported by hand or by simple sledges across rivers and hills. The larger standing stones and corbelled roof slabs, weighing many tons, were likely moved using rollers, ropes, and the coordinated strength of hundreds of people, leveraging inclines and perhaps even water transport. The shaping itself was a feat of persistent abrasion. Without metal chisels, masons used harder stones as hammers and grinders, patiently pecking and polishing surfaces over countless hours. The perfectly fitted stones of the passage roofs, which have kept the chambers dry for millennia, were shaped by this relentless, incremental friction. This monumental effort, spanning generations, underscores the profound value these communities placed on the solstice event. The perfect alignment was not enough, the setting had to be perfect too. The choice of stone, its journey to the site, and its meticulous shaping were all acts of devotion. They were ensuring that when the sun finally sent its signal, it would be received by a worthy vessel, a sanctuary crafted from the Earth's own materials to honor the sky's most pivotal light. The knowledge to command the sun was a form of supreme power. So who, in these ancient societies, held the keys to the solstice light? The structures themselves are silent on the architects, but the objects buried with them speak volumes. In the tomb of a high-status individual near Stonehenge, known as the Amesbury Archer, archaeologists found not only fine pottery and gold ornaments, but also a set of stone tools used for working metal and shaping wood. This suggests a person of immense skill and likely esoteric knowledge, someone who could transform raw materials into objects of power. Nearby, another burial, that of the Boscombe Bowmen, contained a group of individuals with distinctive artifacts, hinting at a specialized, perhaps hereditary, group who traveled to the site. These finds point toward a class of elite astronomer-engineers, individuals whose authority was built on a unique and indispensable mastery of both the celestial and the material worlds. They were the keepers of the calendar, the interpreters of the sky's messages, and the directors of the monumental labor that turned observation into architecture. Their power was not necessarily drawn from brute force, but from a perceived ability to mediate between the community and the cosmic forces that governed their survival. By predicting the sun's turn, they were seen as ensuring the return of spring, the success of the harvest, the very continuity of life. This granted them immense spiritual and political influence. Control over the solstice ritual was control over the narrative of renewal itself, a narrative that legitimized social order and centralized authority. We can envision them as master choreographers. They would have determined the exact day for the community to gather, directed the rituals within the sacred chamber, and interpreted the meaning of the light's behavior as it touched specific symbols. A slight miscalculation, a beam that failed to illuminate the expected mark, could have been a crisis of faith, while a perfect alignment reinforced their divine mandate. This knowledge was likely guarded, passed down through apprenticeships within families or select orders, creating a powerful intellectual elite. The long-term nature of these projects, spanning generations, required not just a single visionary but a sustained social structure that could preserve and execute a complex plan over decades. This implies a society with a degree of hierarchy, resource coordination, and a shared cosmological belief strong enough to motivate centuries of labor. The Solstice Sanctuary, therefore, was more than a temple. It was the physical engine of a social contract. It centralized spiritual authority, organized communal labor around a sacred goal, and visibly demonstrated the elite's special connection to the cosmos. The beam of light did not just mark a solar event, it illuminated and reinforced the very framework of power that made its capture possible. Long after the last ceremonial drumbeat faded, the great mounds and stone chambers remained, silent and enigmatic in the landscape. Their original names and purposes slipped from memory, but their power did not. In the absence of history, the human imagination rushed in to fill the void, weaving new stories to explain these impossible structures and the strange lights that sometimes visited them. In Ireland, Newgrange and its sister mounds at the bend of the Boyne did not become ancient tombs in local lore. They became Shia, the fairy mounds of the Tuatha De Danann. These were said to be the homes of the magical, immortal people who retreated underground, and to enter one, especially on a sacred night like Samhain or the solstice, was to risk being trapped in their timeless realm. The precise beam of winter sunlight was reframed as a doorway for the fairy folk, or as a treasure glowing within the hill. Across the ocean, the imposing mass of Machu Picchu high in the Andes inspired a different kind of legend. To the local Quechua people long after the Inca had gone, it was known as a secret, sacred place, but also as the possible refuge of a last Inca king, or the literal stones where the sun was tied to prevent its escape. The Intihuatana stone itself became a focus of myth, a place of such spiritual potency that it was believed to hold the mountain spirit. These stories are not mere fanciful decoration. They are a direct response to the awe these sites command. When a community witnesses a perfectly engineered ray of light pierce a sealed hill on the year's darkest morning, with no memory of the architects, only one conclusion feels possible: magic. The phenomenon demanded a supernatural explanation. The myths served a vital purpose. They domesticated the unknown. By populating these sites with fairies, gods, or sleeping heroes, people gave them a reason for being that fit within their own understanding of the world. A frightening, inexplicable structure became a knowable entity with rules, even if those rules were magical. Do not touch the fairy mound. Do not anger the sleeping god inside the mountain. The legends created a protective folklore that often preserved the sites from vandalism or casual destruction out of a sense of fearful respect. This transformation from engineering to mythology reveals a profound truth about human cognition. We are storytelling creatures. When faced with a mystery that outstrips technical explanation, we reach for narrative. the solstice alignment, a product of incredible human intellect, became so perfectly executed that it looped back into the realm of the miraculous. The legends that grew around these places are, in a real sense, a tribute to their builders' success. The architects achieved such seamless harmony between intention and celestial event that their work appeared to be the handiwork of the gods themselves. Their legacy thus lived on in two parallel streams, in the silent, enduring stone waiting for the sun, and in the vibrant, evolving stories told by firesides for generations, each keeping the sanctuary alive in the human heart long after its original prayer was forgotten. The map of ancient light is still being drawn, its next coordinates perhaps hidden under a blanket of dense jungle or a farmer's quiet field. Today, the search for new solstice sanctuaries has entered a revolutionary phase, guided not by shovels but by photons and radio waves. The key technology is LiDAR, or light detection and ranging. Imagine flying a plane or drone over an impenetrable rainforest and firing millions of laser pulses at the ground. These pulses pierce the smallest gaps in the foliage, bounce off the solid earth below, and return to a sensor. By calculating the time each pulse takes to return, a computer can strip away every single leaf, vine, and tree, revealing the naked topography of the ground beneath. What emerges is a ghostly, three-dimensional map of the ancient landscape, showing man-made shapes invisible for centuries. Across Central and South America, this technology has been nothing short of transformative. In the Maya region, LiDAR has revealed vast, interconnected networks of raised roads, terraced farmlands, and undiscovered pyramids, fundamentally rewriting estimates of population size and complexity. Among these discoveries, researchers are now scrutinizing the scans for potential astronomical alignments. A newly found plaza, or a curiously angled platform nestled in a hidden valley, could be the next candidate for a solstice observation point, its purpose waiting to be confirmed by an on-the-ground survey at the right time of year. Meanwhile, in the rolling landscapes of Europe, a different tool takes the lead. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses of energy into the soil, painting a picture of what lies beneath without moving a single stone. This method is perfect for investigating known but unexcavated mounds, like the many that dot the Irish and British countryside. A radar scan can reveal the outline of a buried passage, the potential chamber at its heart, or even the telltale void of a roof box structure. It allows archaeologists to peer into the Earth's secrets with minimal disturbance, prioritizing which sites hold the most promise for a future, careful excavation. These technologies are expanding our vision from singular sites to entire sacred landscapes. We are no longer just looking for a chamber, but for a system. How does a newly discovered mound align with a distant mountain peak on the solstice sunrise? Does a pattern of standing stones form a sightline to a ceremonial center? The data allows us to ask these questions on a continental scale. Several promising sites are currently under intense study. In Turkey, the massive Neolithic complex of Göbekli Tepe, with its stunningly early stone pillars carved with animals, is being meticulously resurveyed for potential solar and stellar alignments. In Peru, researchers are using drones equipped with special sensors to map the Nazca lines and surrounding hills, searching for patterns that might integrate the famous geoglyphs into a larger cosmological scheme tied to solar extremes. Each of these investigations is a hypothesis waiting for the sun's testimony. This forward-looking work carries a thrilling implication. The catalogue of engineered solstice sanctuaries is almost certainly incomplete. For every Newgrange we can walk into, there may be a dozen more whose mounds have been ploughed flat or whose chambers remain sealed, their aligned passages still waiting in perfect darkness. The greatest discoveries about our ancient past are likely not in museums but still buried, patiently holding their alignment. They wait for the moment when a laser pulse from the sky or a radar wave from the surface finally asks the right question, and when a future researcher stands in the right place at the perfect dawn, ready to witness a beam of light fulfill an appointment made thousands of years ago. From the silent depths of those ancient chambers to the open-air altars of mountain peaks, a single truth emerges from the stone. These were not acts of superstition, but of profound communion. Our ancestors looked at the wandering sun and saw a partner in the story of their survival. They listened to the year's slow turn and answered with monuments of breathtaking precision. That narrow beam of winter light was their signature on a cosmic contract, a promise etched in geometry that the darkness would always yield. They were the original architects of awe, building traps for eternity to capture a moment of fleeting gold. Their legacy is not a list of kings or a chronicle of battles, but something far more intimate. It is a conversation frozen in rock and earth, waiting for us to lean in and listen. We hear it in the hum of a chamber designed to amplify a chant, in the glitter of a quartz facade chosen to catch the dawn, in the patient generational labor of moving mountains to mark a sunrise. This drive to find our place in the grand celestial rhythm is a thread that connects us across millennia. Today, we might track the solstice with atomic clocks and satellite data, yet we still gather at Stonehenge or Newgrange, drawn by the same primal pull. We seek that visceral shock of connection, the humility that comes from standing in a beam of light plotted 5,000 years ago. It reminds us that before we split the atom or charted the genome, we first learned to read the sky, and in doing so, we began to write our own story into the cosmos. These sanctuaries are more than historical mysteries, they are mirrors. They reflect a timeless human yearning to build meaning, to create order from chaos, and to touch something greater than ourselves. They show us that the most enduring monuments are not those built from conquest, but from wonder. So the next time you feel the winter sun on your face, or watch the longest day of summer begin to fade, remember the silent chambers and aligned passages waiting in hills and jungles across the world. They stand as permanent invitations to look up, to marvel, and to remember our shared, ancient project of finding light in the darkness.